When experiencing a scene for the first time, I often feel there's an aspect to it that is not necessarily forgotten about, but perhaps glossed over. So in this video, I wanted to talk about our favorite, most iconic scenes from movies, video games, anime, and how they would be nothing without the music and sound effects that surround them. These background pieces are truly the foundation of which the entire scene is built on. Without a soft, gentle melody to set the mood, or a triumphant final counterattack measure. These scenes lose the potential to become the icons they are now. Oftentimes when I consider these moments, the song is the first thing that I remember. Like a trigger in my brain how even a single note can remind me of my first time experiencing that soundtrack. I don't know a single thing about music theory or anything of the sort, but I've always appreciated the power of music and the emotional strength it carries. Take for my first example, Attack on Titan. Spoiler warning, by the way, I encourage you to watch the show for yourself before you get spoiled on any of this. Attack on Titan is a massive show, and it's filled with the most beautiful animation and complicated storylines being woven. You'd think that's all it would need to stand on its own 2 feet, and you'd be right. Those alone make the show fantastic, which is why it's all the better that Attack on Titan has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Every scene utilizes a song that manages to fit right in without drawing attention away from the show itself, executing perfectly on setting the tone, whether that be one of suspense or one of glory. Take this scene, for example, from the episode Warrior. If you're already a fan, you're definitely no stranger to this part or this song. A strong wind blows and sends this flagpost flying off the wall, causing an echoing crack as we're left with silence. Moments later, light starts to fill the scene and a quiet melody starts to build. As the scene goes on, the works of the mega-talented Hiroyuki Sawano are at play, as the song becomes increasingly more dramatic, and with each instrument that joins, the scene only becomes more intense. The second Mikasa takes her one and only chance to strike, a choir joins in, but still, all the while, the song stays for the most part reserved in the background, until this moment. When our once-thought comrades in arms are forced to transform and reveal themselves, the track becomes distorted and shaky. Most of the instruments leave the scene, and for a few brief moments we're left with only the singer's voice and sounds of destruction, until their Titan forms are shown and the song ramps up stronger than ever. This scene is brilliant, and this part in particular where the instruments can only be heard faintly in the background always seemed to me like a representation of Eren's disbelief. Eren is still desperately hoping for this to be a joke or even a dream of some sort, but once they emerge from the smoke, it's ever apparent that this is reality. Situations like these are incredibly dire for our heroes, and the soundtrack is expertly crafted to make you experience not only just suspense, but danger as well. Feelings such as these are experienced in different ways throughout our lives and as we grow up. As an adult, you'll be much more prepared to watch and take on all sorts of challenges, but as a child, that isn't the case. When I was a kid, I was pretty much scared of everything. Things still haven't changed all that much, but at least now as an adult, I can push it down and bottle it up just like all my other stresses and anxieties. Still, something that's always been a bridge or an escape from all that has been video games. I've been playing them since I was a kid, and they've been a part of my entire life, but when I think of a few specific beats in gaming that stick out from my childhood, 2 games come to mind: Ocarina of Time and Mega Man X. Ocarina of Time has always had a lot of underlying creepiness to it. Especially for when I was young, there's lots of freaky enemies and a lot of very daunting tasks. Even if it's a video game, the thought of saving the world is a lot to take on. But I'm not talking about what you most likely think I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Dead Hand, not the Wall Masters, not even Ganondorf. I'm talking about the Forest Temple. Immediately entering the Forest Temple, the theme gently builds up in the background and you're greeted by 2 wolves which give off a horrifying howl. There's a lot of reasons why I've always felt off when it comes to the Forest Temple. For starters, when I first played Ocarina of Time, I knew that my brother had originally stopped playing before he beat the temple. So going in, I was given a sinking feeling of, if your older brother couldn't do this, how can you? To add on to that, this is the first temple you take on as adult Link. There's a lot more expected of you now that you are fully grown and have become the wielder of the Master Sword. All these feelings combined with the beautiful yet absolutely haunting melody that plays within the temple. The soundtrack feels so natural and at home here, and it gives off the impression that this place is sacred, a grove that should remain untouched and guarded. Yet, as it goes on, it sounds increasingly strange, and it slowly reveals the entirety of the song to be a constant short loop utilizing few sound elements, one of which even sounds like an altered version of Link's grunt. Now, every dungeon in the game is filled with looping tracks, but at least to me it feels like it works best in the Forest Temple. This temple constantly has you looping back through rooms all to find your way back to the center room, as the goal is to head down this elevator. This entire dungeon feels like one big twisted trance, and as a kid I've felt a lot of fear at the thought of taking on the challenge. Even now, when I can appreciate the Forest Temple theme a lot more, I still can't completely shake that feeling I used to have. On the flip side of Ocarina of Time's looping, captivating soundtrack, Mega Man X put me on the edge for a different reason: silence. Just for a little setup here, at the beginning of the game, the first real boss you fight is Vile, who you are unable to do anything against, and he promptly takes you down. That is, until Zero shows up and in a single shot is able to deal massive damage. This does an excellent job at immediately conveying the sheer power difference between you two, and makes your journey and now want to grow strong all the more palpable. After adventuring through every stage and collecting many upgrades and various weapons, you're left with only one final stage to take on: Sigma's Fortress. Once you reach the top of the first stage, Vile appears to block your path, and after a brief moment of staring each other down, Zero arrives on the scene determined to take him on. As the music fades out, you hear the ensuing fight that takes place. All that's left is silence, as you wonder about the outcome of the fight. Entering the room only reveals that Zero lost, which as a kid was something I couldn't even comprehend. I'm not as strong as Zero is, so if he lost, how am I supposed to beat Vile? What am I supposed to do? The battle starts up once more, and even after all the training you've done, you're still unable to even graze Vile's armor. Until Zero makes one final last-ditch effort and blows himself up to take out both him and Vile. The entire screen turns white as it's revealed that Zero's sacrifice was only successful in taking out his armor, not Vile himself. As Vile arrogantly mocks both of you, X is enraged and receives a massive energy spike, causing the final fight between you and Vile. There are a few tracks that play during this. Your fight with Vile has music both times, and there's a theme that plays as you say your goodbyes to Zero and he acknowledges your growth as a maverick hunter, gifting you his blaster. This scene is pretty unconventional compared to everything else I wanted to talk about, and obviously isn't very dramatic considering it's just a Super Nintendo game, but there's always been something special to me about how quiet the game was in those few crucial moments. And like I mentioned before, as a kid, moments like these hit quite hard. But now as an adult, fortunately, I'm still playing games about trying to save the world, and if you're looking for an exceptionally well-written game with a masterpiece soundtrack, look no further than Xenoblade Chronicles. The title screen alone is worth its own video, honestly, but at least for today, that's not the part I'll be talking about. As good as so many of the scenes in this game are, for this section, I'll be talking about the final fight with Egil. Without going too far into the incredible lore behind Xenoblade, Egil, the leader of Mechonis, is directly opposed to the option of peace and unity. Shulk, his friends, and many others are all trying desperately to stop Egil's tirade on the world, and a lot has been leading up to this final confrontation between them. And seeing that no words, negotiations, or even the pleas from his own sister seem to be getting through to him, their only option is to fight.
We won't stop. Not until you realize that.
At the end of the fight, Shulk lands a seemingly deadly blow on Egil's chest, and as he looks onto the party that just struck him down, a tragic song begins to play. Egil continues to question the reason why his own sister Vinea and his people have gone against his will and won't follow him on his conquest. As the scene continues on and the music begins to swell, this scene plays out.
Your blade, it did not cut deep enough.
The Golden Mechon.
Permit me to apologize for calling you bugs just now. You proved to be a worthy adversary after all. Shulk.
Not many scenes nail it so well in such a short a time as this one, but Xenoblade Chronicles manages to deliver on a long-awaited hype confrontation. The realization that even with that powerful stab, it was not nearly enough to stop Aegil. The terror in Shulk as he sees the golden Mechon rise up, and throughout all of it, even though Aegil still sees them as his enemies and wants them dead, they've earned his respect as he apologizes for insulting them and readies for the ensuing fight. A lot of the feelings I've talked about today are ones of suspense, fear, even danger. For this next one, I'm not saying it doesn't have those factors, but for me it's more a feeling of excitement and frankly confusion. Let's talk about Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter has quickly risen the ranks of one of my all-time favorite shows, and the Chimera arc in particular is what truly solidified it in my mind as one of the greats. The entire Chimera arc is filled with incredibly eerie songs that take you far, far from your comfort zone, and for good reason. These episodes do not mess around and have some very intense moments. There's so many fights and so many songs from which I could choose from, but no option I think fits better than the fight between Netero and Meruem. This battle is what I personally consider to be the best fight in the entire show. Both combatants fighting with intent to kill, but it's especially interesting for Netero as he is at a clear physical disadvantage, and even slipping up for half a second leads to a heavy blow from the Ant King. Throughout this entire exchange, Meruem is still unclear as to what his real name is. Netero refuses to answer him until the conflict is resolved, which leaves the Ant King to be a bit more reserved and make sure he doesn't kill Netero in a single shot. The fight itself is expertly choreographed and features a very grandiose track aptly titled The Last Mission. But as the battle reaches its end and Netero pours every ounce of all the power his body has left into one final blast, even after all that, his efforts prove to be pointless, as Meruem emerges with a bruised body, but it's clear he could keep fighting for hours if not days, whereas Netero is now quite literally on his last leg. Meruem declares himself the victor, but shows respect for Netero's efforts, explaining that he will make sure that once the ants take over, some humans will be kept alive so their race can continue on. For the final time, the king demands that Netero tell him his name. Only ambient surrounding noises can be heard before Netero lets out a small, rough laugh, as the skull distorts and glitches the screen. Now focusing on Netero, he is covered in an ominous, terrifying red, Meruem in a soft, cool blue. As Netero reveals the name Meruem to the king, it's clear that the fight is not over yet. Where Meruem expected him to be pleading for his life at this point, he is instead smiling. Meruem, for the first time in his life, experiences true fear as the king watches on, and as this beaten old man stabs himself in the heart, this scene plays out. This part is tremendously well done. Throughout the fight, we're supposed to be rooting for Netero as he's the good guy and the last line of defense for humans, but we've also gotten to see Meruem learn compassion and grow a lot over the past however many episodes, and when it all comes down to it, the contrast of the hero coated in this terrifying red and purple malice as the villain is in total fear in a darker blue or even an almost complete lack of color. The conclusion of the battle feels unclear for both sides. Who was the good guy and who truly won? There's a lot more scenes that I really want to talk about. Stuff like the long walk back to Eren's house from Attack on Titan episode 56. The way Wind Waker uses sound effects during mini-boss fights. Pretty much any moment or song from Celeste, multiple Undertale scenes, the beautiful soundtrack of Minecraft, and only about 1 million more anime scenes I really would love to talk about. Unfortunately, I don't have time to mention all of them in this one video, but I do have time for one more. I recently finished the show Made in Abyss, which was certainly an emotional ride, and because of that I will not be spoiling any part of the show here. I think it's essential you go into it blind, but I will be talking about a short scene from the end of the first episode. We follow our two main characters Rico and Reg as they head up this hill to get a better view. This is Reg's first time in the city of Orth, and Rico wants to show him the view of the sunrise, and it is just... As shadows uncover the town, we get a full gorgeous view of not only the place they call home, but the massive abyss that occupies the entire center of this island. This scene isn't monumental, but for me it did a wonderful job of showing me the scale of this massive pit and getting me genuinely invested to find out how it got there and what the hell is down there. Hearing this song for the first time was more than enough to establish a want to binge the entire show right away, and there's so many other pieces of the soundtrack that are unforgettable as well. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, if you want to like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And please let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this one. I already mentioned I've got a lot more video games and anime and whatever kind of other nonsense I'd love to talk about. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to see you around sometime.